Bro, you
Yeah.
usually do the intro.
I know. I'm just trying to think of exactly how I'm gonna say it.
You should probably do like a long, like a what's up, guys? Where you can get your voice really high and then you hold that high note for a long time. Like, guys, it's the MMA pod. Everybody loves that.
Guys,
Everybody loves that. And then put like a little dubstep, like a little fucking like Smeshcast, like.
and this is Noah before the caffeine pill kicks in, so this is not a good idea. What is up, guys? Welcome back to the Smeshcast. I am Rowie. We've got Noah. We've got Adam. It is Smesh Sunday. Get hyped. We are fresh off the fights. Let's get started.
Is this the Smeshcast? I thought this was the handsome contest. Look at all these contestants. Look at these fellas. Look at these handsome men right here.
Well, speaking of handsome men, think about Paulo Costa, the most beautiful man on the planet, got his ass whooped last night. Israel Adesanya gets a second round knockout or TKO, I think, potentially. Who cares? He retains his middleweight crown in spectacular fashion.
How many belt defenses is this now? Is this 5? 4?
What?
No,
it's
2.
It's 2.
No, I'm way ahead of myself.
It's 2 official, but if you ask Izzy, it's 3. He calls he says the Whitaker fight. He already had the belt. The Gastelum fight was when he won the belt, and the Whitaker fight was his first defense. So let's call it 3 for Izzy's sake, 2 for the official record books.
Right on. I mean, God, I don't see this man losing his belt anytime soon.
Well, let's hold our horses on that conversation. That's an awesome conversation. I really would like to have. Let's talk about the fight first and foremost. Israel Adesanya looked like he was not in danger once, right? He dictated the pace of that fight. He dictated the range like nobody else. And what it really came down to was what Izzy is, I think, the best in the UFC at, one of the best in the world in general, and that is the feints. He just had Paulo Costa fighting on every little movement he made. Little jump here, jump there. Paulo was jumping around. He could not at all get his own rhythm going. He couldn't at all get his own offense going.
Oh, he had no rhythm.
Fighting on the feints.
He threw how many punches in that fight? How many punches in that first round? I don't think he threw a single punch in that first round.
He barely threw anything because he couldn't. Every time he was about to go and set himself to throw a punch, he would fake him, he would freeze, he would stop it, and he would try to cut off the cage. And you would even see Izzy would walk backwards and then all of a sudden stop and feint, and Paulo would retreat immediately, go back to the middle of the cage. He realized every time that he was going to go and charge in, he was getting stung. And all that while he was trying to figure out a way in, Izzy was just chopping out at that leg. That lead leg was getting fucked up. You could see
that thing was beat.
Oh, it was so bad.
Hey, here I have a question.
Yeah.
That I don't know. Maybe one of you guys do. 'Cause I see it all the time, and I feel like at this point in my watching fighting career, I'll call it tentatively.
Yeah.
What are the suction cups? That's like a weight cutting thing.
No, it's not
what's going on there?
It's just a general therapy thing.
Yeah, it's a muscle recovery. So it breaks the blood capillaries on the surface, and then blood flow to the area and helps the muscles recover faster.
Okay, neat.
Yeah, in general, like anything that the blood carries nutrients, so blood is essential for healing. So if you can do something that'll cause some slight damage in the area, blood will rush to heal that, and it'll heal everything else in the area as well.
Right. So is it any kind of my assumption watching those leg kicks was this is like a potential weak point. Is that the case? Or is it just is that just it just leaves a cosmetic mark that really doesn't mean anything? You shouldn't really take it to mean anything.
No, yeah, it's just that Paulo was using it for recovery. It's not like a target or anything. But okay. I think the marks that were distinctly on his leg, a lot of people were saying, look at how bad Izzy's bruising him up, and he was for sure. It was definitely red, but the distinct cut marks people thought were the actual marks where he was kicking.
See, that's why I asked, because I saw the cut marks behind before those leg kicks started to land, and I think that's just, you got to wonder whether or not that is something like a bruise or something like,
Yeah.
but all right.
But what was
Either way
amazing-
though, yeah, he was certainly beating up that leg regardless.
Yeah, and the targeting on it, like the accuracy was amazing, right? He wasn't even hitting, he never almost at all hit the thigh. He wasn't really hitting the bottom part of that leg. Every single time it was that space, the top part of that shin, right around the very bottom of the knee and behind the knee. That's the area of the leg that's the least protected and that you can cause the most damage. And you can see it was really just messing with Paulo Costa's rhythm. It was hurting him. He couldn't get in. And at one point, you saw he was just growing. Basically, as a course of the fight, as the fight progressed, basically Costa was just getting more and more hesitant. He looked almost scared by the end of it. To say,
Yeah,
it sounds weird to say, but he almost seemed just scared to do anything because every time he did anything, he paid for it.
There was one moment during the second round where I distinctly remember seeing a look. It was like a split second, but there was this look on Izzy's face where he was just staring at Costa, and he was just. The look said it all. It said, "I have you. I know exactly what you're going to do next, and
you know what it means.
You've got no chance. I'm
you know
It was a look that said,
It means checkmate.
Yes, exactly. He was telling him, I am playing with you at this point. It's my fight. And then, Costa, he's a tough bastard, but you can tell, it was getting to him. And that head kick in the second round, after that, there was no doubt he was frightened of Israel. And with good reason, clearly.
Yeah, and then every time Costa would try to come in with a flurry, you saw, I think it was just twice, maybe 3 times that they had a bit of a faster flurry, right? It was Izzy just with those one punch, those quick jabs, those quick leg kicks. And then they had a couple of those times where they got close. There were a couple times actually Costa did get him against the fence. And what Izzy's game plan clearly was don't stand in that mid-range. So he immediately, when Costa got too close, he just jumped right in for the double underhooks, turned around and got right back to the middle. That was his panic. That was his escape route. Or he would go out. What I found really interesting, and this was kind of the opposite of the Dominick Reyes Jan Blachowitz fight, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Costa, what he likes to do when he gets you against the fence, when you try to circle out to your left or Costa's right, he'll throw that big that right body kick to try to cut you off. Mm-hmm. And what Izzy did is he backed to the right, but also backwards a little bit. And he did actually get right into that kick, but the way that Costa would land after throwing that kick, he wasn't ready to chase Izzy. So Izzy might eat the kick. He was also ready for it, so he knew what was coming. He wouldn't eat it fully, but then Costa would have no follow-up, and Izzy would just dance right out.
Mm-hmm.
He just understood the distance so well. And in those couple flurries that he had, he would go body and then head, and he just punished Costa. Costa wouldn't touch him, and he ended up knocking him out with the exact same punch that he knocked Robert Whittaker out, where he leaned way back to the right, and he had that big left hook that caught him on the chin. In this case, it caught him a bit more on the temple near the forehead, and it put Costa down. Costa might not have been fully out, but then that ground and pound really punished him.
He was,
and I think
he was not defending in any really intelligent way. He wasn't advancing position.
I just think that in some fights, you would see the fighters try to really fight back, maybe even get mad at that stoppage. But I think the reason you didn't is because Costa just realized how outclassed he was. He didn't feel like he had a chance to win at that point in the fight, and he just wanted out. And he was hurt bad.
Mm-hmm.
So
I've got to imagine, like, being at the level of Costa, and Costa is an extremely highly skilled fighter. I mean, just to have all that confidence, and then you walk in there with Israel, and then there's just something about the way he's moving, the way that he is staring into you, the way he is reading everything you do, that I guess it's just, if you know, you know. And Costa knew very quickly, any opening that he had, it really wasn't going to pay off for him. It wasn't going to work. He was not, he didn't stand a chance.
Yeah. It's weird to see somebody with the body composition of like Costa or Romero getting TKO'd, because they're like, it seems a little bit like common sense. They're like, oh, they're just so big and bulky that like it's not possible for them to be knocked out. Like they're just too strong. But I mean, Izzy just looked phenomenal, and like it was kind of sweet to see him sort of get knocked down like that.
It reminded me almost like a kickboxing version of like a jiu-jitsu match where you talk about those guys, and Paulo Costa, if I'm going to make this metaphor, has been competing against black belts, top level black belts all his life, and he's been destroying them, and he has all this confidence. And then he walked in there and he rolled with the Gracie, and he realized that there are levels to this. And when you roll with these guys, yeah, you've rolled with black belts, but this is something else, and they have control over everything that you do, and they see everything that you're trying to set up, and they've set up 4 things already to defend against it, and to attack and penalize you for it, and take advantage of you in every little thing that you do. And you just realize after a very short amount of time that there's just nothing that you're ever going to be able to do against this person. It's just not going to happen. And it was just that kind of a fight.
Mm-hmm.
All right, well, the real question that, Noah, you were asking earlier is what comes next for Israel Adesanya? So we know that Dana's confirmed this. We've been talking about it for a couple months now. We know that the next fight will be Robert Whittaker against Jared Cannonier. And the winner of that fight will be able to fight Israel for the belt. So in my opinion, okay, I guess there's 2 parts to this question. Who do you guys think will win that fight? And who do you guys think is the tougher challenge for Israel, and how tough of a challenge is that, I guess? So I guess 3-part question. So who wins that fight? Yeah.
I'm a little biased because I'm a big fan of Whittaker.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a feeling that he's going to win, but I'm not sure how a rematch with Adesanya would look necessarily. Because, I mean, there was a lot of talk saying, oh, he wasn't himself for that fight. He wasn't able to train properly. He wasn't in the right mindset to fight Izzy for the title. And, he looked great against Darren Till. But this fight will be a good fight to sort of determine what's next, I guess.
Go ahead.
I guess I haven't seen very much of Cannonier, despite, hearing his name fucking all the goddamn time. So, yeah, I don't have a great memory for these fights. So I don't really have a real stake in this. I do think it's funny. I'm looking at Cannonier's record. He's got a back-to-back loss with Jan Blachowitz and Dominick Reyes. I think that's pretty neat.
Mm-hmm. So Jared Cannonier is a really interesting case, and he's always been the dark horse of the division, and I think for good reason. So he was actually starting off as a heavyweight. He had some good experience in heavyweight. He did really well. Took a couple losses, moved down to light heavyweight, competed pretty well there, got some wins, took some big losses against, as you mentioned, some insanely talented guys in Jan and in Reyes.
Granted, these were a couple of years ago.
Moved down to middleweight, and that's where he's really kind of come into his own, and he's been really, really successful. And what he's really got going for him is he's used to competing against big, strong, powerful guys. And he's got the power of a heavyweight, but he's at middleweight. He's got some top-level grappling. He's not necessarily a major submission threat, but he can hold his own in the jiu-jitsu. He's got good wrestling. He's fast. He's explosive. Jared Cannonier is a really, really powerful and good guy. I think if Robert Whittaker of old comes into the cage that night, it'll be a very competitive fight. I might lean Whittaker, but I think that Jared has a very, very, very good chance to win that fight. But I think if anything other than Robert Whittaker of old comes in, it's Jared Cannonier all day. And I think that's an interesting fight against Adesanya, because he has the power of the other guys, but he's got a lot more speed. He's got I guess the speed of a much faster, maybe a Uriah Hall. Very different style than Uriah Hall, of course, but he's got a lot more speed than the other guys do. And he also has the power, that one-punch knockout power, to back it up. And so I think that'll be a very interesting fight. I think there's also a lot of mutual respect between him and Izzy. It's a really fun fight to make. But regardless of if it's Robert Whittaker or Jared Cannonier, you've got to lean Israel Adesanya. You've got to lean him for all of these.
No matter what.
Yeah, of course.
This was his 100th win. Just to demonstrate
crazy
martial arts, I guess.
Just to demonstrate
combat sports.
Experience that this man has. Is there anyone that you can throw at him that can surprise him, that has something that hasn't already at one point been offered to him? And I think there really is an argument to make. Listen, I already don't follow, I already am not as well versed as UFC as either of you two guys. So I'm certainly the last guy to be talking about kickboxing, but I'm sure there's an argument that could be made that, with the experience he has today, he's a better fighter all around than he ever was back in his kickboxing days. If he's still getting, he's still getting better. I mean, geez, how many guys does he have to take down? How many questions do we have to ask before we just say, like, yeah, he's the GOAT. He did it. He's the greatest.
Because he might be the greatest of all time ability-wise. We don't know. But regardless of if he is or not, greatest of all time is a resume thing, in my opinion. Just like I would say, Cain Velasquez is probably the greatest heavyweight of all time, but you can't give him that title because he didn't end up having enough fights to be able to do that. When he was in his prime, when we saw him fight, he was that guy, but you can't assign him wins that he hasn't actually had, and he was injured, he couldn't fight. So in the same way over here, Israel might become the greatest of all time, but he has to put together, I would say, literally 5 more title defenses easily to be in the conversation. And you still are not eclipsing John Jones very easily at that point. It's just that you're now in the conversation with John Jones.
Sure. I think that's reasonable, but I think it's also reasonable to be able to look at a guy, ahead of time and, just look at how he's doing. I mean, who reasonably, the only thing I can see on the horizon who can maybe raise some serious questions is like a Khamzat, because he raises questions for everyone. But, to use a musical metaphor, if you will, a lot of people say, To Pimp a Butterfly is not a classic yet because, it's only came out in the last few years. But we all know that, it's going down as a classic. So, I mean, we can argue with semantics and we can have, whatever little criteria we want. I think that it's at least, I think it's fair to say that he is going to go down as someone in that greatest of all time conversation and a extremely special fighter.
So
a once in a generation fighter.
Here's what I would actually say about that. I think that's a good metaphor. To Pimp a Butterfly is an album, right? It's like a single fight. It's like saying the Gastelum fight, we all know, is going to be an all-time classic. It's not maybe old enough to be an all-time classic, but we know it always will be. However, you can't say that you couldn't say after To Pimp a Butterfly at that moment that Kendrick was the GOAT. You could say maybe he's going to have the GOAT career, but he has to come out with 3 more of those albums in order to be in that conversation. Just like Adesanya, what he's done so far is right up there, but he has to replicate it for a few more years before he can actually be part of that conversation. Before that, it's just speculation, and I really think that he will. I agree with you. I
very
just think
confident
it's
in that.
Too early to say anything. It's just not fair. My question, I guess, Adam, if you want to weigh in on this, go ahead.
Yeah, I agree to the point that his resume will say a lot over the next few years. And I mean, he was mentioning he's like light heavyweight John Jones, even heavyweight Stipe, which are crazy fights. So
I can't picture him gaining that. I can't picture him gaining any weight. Seems like one of those guys is just permanently skinny.
So I think he's definitely on the right track right now. I mean, he just looks like unstoppable. And so we'll see in a couple of years. I definitely agree that he is in potential talks or he's on track for being in potential talks for sure.
Yes.
I think when you see this happen enough times, when you see this pattern of just these special guys, I think it's easier to call them.
Yeah,
I mean, people are already looking at Khamzat and saying he could be that special guy too.
I mean, but so I have actually 2 things to say. So I had a question I'm going to ask you guys in a second about the weight switch. But before we get to that, actually, just thought of this. Why would you start saying this about Izzy? Why wouldn't you say this about Kamaru? Kamaru's undefeated, just like Izzy is.
Oh, I absolutely think that Kamaru doesn't get enough credit as being a phenomenal holder of the welterweight of one of the most
2 title defenses,
hotly contested belts in the UFC. One of the most heated divisions.
They both have 2 title defenses. Kamaru has arguably beat better competition. Kamaru's got more fights in the UFC, I believe. They're both undefeated. They're both based. Neither of them have really looked like they were going
Kamaru
to lose
has
at
one
any
loss.
If anything,
can I?
Rowie,
Rowie,
right? He has.
Can I interject and just say this is very interesting because I feel like these are the same conversations people might have had in the era of Anderson Silva and GSP. Anderson Silva was pretty much the undisputed, like he was the popular consensus greatest of all time, and it's because not only was he beating people, it was flashy. They were both making their opponents look completely outclassed, but one of them was very flashy about it. And
that 185 guy. That's the 185 kickboxer.
Yes, I think that people will always kind of defer to the heavier weight is the better one.
No. I think it's even better of a comparison than you're even selling. I think you're underselling this comparison. That's a great comparison. You have the 185 flashy kickboxer guy who's a skinny guy that knocks out all those big power punchers. Everyone's like, what the fuck? How's this happening? Mm-hmm. And then at 170, you've got the guy that Russell fucks everybody.
Mm-hmm.
It's perfect.
Yeah.
And the guy, and to further the comparison, if I'm recalling, GSP for his era, for his weight, he was phenomenally powerful and strong, much more so than a lot of his competition. Kamaru, it's the exact same thing. He is phenomenally powerful and strong for his for the division. People can barely wrestle with him because he can just out-muscle them.
It's the physicality, yeah. But so we know that Kamaru is never going to move up to 185 to fight Izzy because we know Kamaru and Izzy are good friends. They're both Nigerian. They both have no, they don't have the same manager. But regardless, they are very close. However, there has been talk for, I would say, a year now about Izzy moving up to either 205 or to heavyweight. So I guess there's two questions here. How many more fights do you think Izzy needs to have? How many more title defenses at 185 before he moves up? And when he moves up, if he does, who should it be against? The 205 champion, the heavyweight champion, or John Jones at heavyweight, wherever John Jones is in that career?
I would say an ideal situation is like maybe 2 to 3 title defenses that happen in the sense of what happened last night, where Flashy outclassing his opponent, and then if at that point John Jones has the heavyweight belt, I'd love to see him just leapfrog over light heavyweight and go straight up to heavyweight and take a belt there, because that would be the first sort of simultaneous double champion that's over one weight class.
That'd be cool.
That would be a very iconic kind of thing, the kind of thing that Izzy wants to do with his career.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, can you imagine the John Jones, is he at heavyweight for the heavyweight belt? That would be so crazy. Oh my God. Especially if John Jones knocks out, let's say he knocks out Ngannou in some crazy world. He knocks Ngannou out. Izzy moves up and knocks Jones out at heavyweight.
Then we will reapproach the GOAT conversation.
Yes. then we can go back to the GOAT conversation. And Noah, I will say the resume starts to really stack up at that point.
No kidding.
So I actually agree. I think two title defenses, and then moves up. I'd say he has the Cannonier, hopefully. I think it would be better for his career if Cannonier gets the win, because that way he has an additional name on the resume.
Yep.
And then after that, I would hope maybe the Jack Hermanson would be good. Maybe if there's another guy that's moving up. I can't think of anyone in particular that's really moving up.
If he gets a couple wins.
Maybe Darren Till. So I guess the winner of Darren Till and Jack the Joker. And this, but this is only assuming that Khamzat doesn't somehow climb that tree and get up there. I think a third title defense against Khamzat, putting an end to that hype train, and then moving up, that would be really ideal.
Mm-hmm. That would be a very big addition to his resume. He could end that. Khamzat's gonna be a very important player, I think, in just the UFC in general for a while. He's gonna take up real estate in a lot of fighters' minds.
I'm very excited to see what he can do. We're gonna get into the Khamzat conversation later, because there has been some chatter in the Khamzat stratosphere, I guess you can say. But before we do that,
did you guys hear Chael just ever pronounce his name?
I don't even want to hear. Oh God.
It's like Chazmat or some shit like that.
Yes, Chazmat. Yes, I think I have heard that actually. So Israel Adesanya, after that fight, he was his usual chattery self. He had some amazing some sound bites. I actually can't think of many, but I mean, if he was talking about how he had Costa jumping at everything. He knew he broke him beforehand. In fact, the pre-fight face-off got over 7 million views on Instagram. The most views in UFC history, over 1 million more than Conor and Khabib.
Unbelievable.
And in that face-off, Costa threw a white belt at Izzy. Izzy basically caught it or had his hand out ready to catch it before Costa even released it, and then whipped it back in his face, and Costa went like this. And Izzy said that from that reaction of just hands out, just like shocked, he knew that everything he did, he would have Costa reacting to. And that's exactly what happened.
Do you think that Izzy's ever like snatched a fly out of the air with chopsticks or something? I bet he could. I bet he could.
Looking. He's probably having a conversation, just goes whoop.
Yeah.
And then absolutely.
No question.
So Izzy, after the fight though, right after he knocked Costa out, he was on top of him. And some people think he might have crossed the line a little bit in his post-fight celebration. He had a little bit of a hip thrust as he stood above Costa.
A hip thrust.
A slight hip thrust.
Israel Adesanya beat up Costa and then imitated himself sodomizing him. Okay. I don't want, if anybody who says that they were okay with Masvidal throwing those extra shots at Askren says that they aren't okay with this, I got some questions.
I mean, come on. Like, here's the thing. On one hand, it's kind of the reason you might say cross the line is because it was sexual, and that starts to be a little bit it's kind of one of those things you don't cross.
To be fair, I feel like for a lot of these fighters, the whole fighting thing is sexual.
But in addition to that, I think I do agree, because on the other hand, like, Masvidal threw huge bombs of right hands into Ben Askren's already unconscious face, right?
Oh, yeah.
Those are gonna be with Ben Askren until he's dead. Whereas
yes,
doing a little hip thrust in the air isn't going to affect Paulo Costa today, other than maybe his ego, which will be shattered more than Ben Askren's chin. But anyway,
that's not nice to wake up to. That's gonna be all over his Twitter.
All right, so
he will never escape that. It's like Cormier. He can't make a tweet without a video of him, the crying face.
So Noah, here's the
question.
Costa
forever is gonna get fucked in the ass by Izzy.
Who would you rather wake up as? The guy who there's gonna be gifs of being pretend fucked in the ass after getting knocked out in a fight for weeks after, or Ben Askren, the guy who actually took the punches to the face the next morning? Who would you rather be in the morning after the fight or the week after the fight?
I think in any situation ever, I'd always rather wake up as Paulo Costa. I want to wake up every day as Paulo Costa. So I'll take that.
Okay. Valid.
Oh man.
Okay, I think we're pretty good on this Izzy Costa one. Let us move on to our co-main event, another huge title fight. We had Jan Blachowitz knocking out Dominick Reyes to capture, in the second round as well, to capture the vacant light heavyweight crown.
What a historic moment.
What a historic moment. And honestly, it was almost a similar performance. It was dominant throughout the entire first round. It was all Blachowicz. He was picking him apart. The kicks were a big deal. And in that second round, Reyes tried to brawl, just like Costa tried eventually to brawl. It was already too late. He was already hurt. It was a bad idea to brawl with this kind of guy.
Mm-hmm.
He got clipped. Big power. That signature Blachowicz left hook, that Polish power. And he got knocked out. And that was it.
Mm-hmm. Whole fight, I was thinking... Oh, sorry, Adam. You go ahead.
I was just going to say, so on Costa's legs, you could see the cupping therapy. But on Dominick Reyes, under his right rib, you could see Blachowicz's toes. Like, it was that
immediately
distinct, the bruise marks.
Yeah, that was tough to look at. Those kicks were shredding him up. My ribs would have been dust by the end of that if that was me in there. You know, I really underestimated Jan going into this. I think a lot of people may have. I feel like you guys were telling me not to underestimate him a little bit, but I definitely, you know, wasn't as familiar with him before, you know, the last year or two. You know, you see a guy with a lot of experience like that, with a lot of wins, but a lot of losses, and you wonder versus a guy like Reyes, you know, who is arguably one of the guys who's come closest to beating Jones ever, arguably beat him. You know, I sort of figured it was a foregone conclusion, similarly to Israel Costa. I thought that this was just everyone going through the motions to give Reyes the belt that already belonged to him. And the whole fight, I was thinking, all right, Reyes, what's your plan here? When you're gonna flip it on, what are you gonna do about this damage that you're taking? Maybe he recalls from the last fight that he slowed down in the last few rounds and he needs to conserve his energy. Maybe he was, feeling him out. But no two ways about it. If I rewatch that fight right now, I think the story of that fight is Jan is powerful and he fucking hurts people and he shuts off your brain when he starts to hurt you. And he is just, on a real hell of a tear. I don't know how many, I don't know whether he'll be able to defend his belt against who I'm going to predict his next his challenger will be is Thiago Santos. That's my suspicion. I don't know if he'll be able to hold on to it for very long, but God, he looked like a beast against the guy who looked like a beast against Jon Jones.
Yeah, so I think there's a couple really, really key things to talk about, and the difference between this fight and Jon Jones and why it is that Reyes was able to arguably beat Jon Jones, but couldn't do it against Jan Blachowitz. So if you look at the fight, there's a couple times when you see that Blachowicz does basically the same thing that Jones does, where he just kind of stands like this, and this is his defense to kind of keep the distance. And Jones does that same thing all the time and has a much bigger reach and is better at doing that. And Reyes was able to get around that and hit Jones anyway, but he wasn't able to do so against Blachowicz. And I think what it comes down to is that Jones does it with amazing defense, but no real offense anymore. Jones isn't as much of a threat offensively as he is defensively. And so when you're fighting him, you can sometimes go for things a little bit more and he might sting you, but he won't knock you out. And so you're not really scared of getting hit by Jon Jones because he's not going to do what Jan Blachowicz is going to do to you. And so Reyes couldn't use those same techniques that worked against Jon because he had a much bigger power puncher to have to avoid. We saw very, very often Reyes would exit in the very same way that Jon Jones does, where he just puts that right hand up and exits to the left along the fence. And whenever he did that, Blachowicz would say, okay, I'm just going to hurt you. I'm not going to knock you out. I'm just going to hurt you. Went for that long left kick. Didn't try to intercept, because if you tried to intercept with the right kick like Paulo Costa does, you can block it like Izzy did. With that left kick, though, you had to be forced to have your hand up over here, as Reyes always does, leaving your body wide open. And that's why he was able to hit him with that kick again and again, and Reyes had no answer for it. It was just a lot of things that happened against Jon that I think that Jon didn't make Reyes pay for, and Blachowicz did. And I think the inexperience of Reyes actually kind of showed here, where he didn't really know what to do when he was under the same pressure. Whereas with the Jon fight, he had a bit more time to dictate things and to not be as worried to get knocked out at a pins drop like he ended up getting knocked out. And then he tried to rush it.
Yeah, and I don't want to say that this is what it all comes down to, but perhaps Reyes got a little bit too comfortable thinking, I beat Jon Jones. I beat one of the best, or if not the best fighter in MMA. It doesn't matter who's in front of me. I'll take them out because I took out Jon Jones. And, using that MMA math, which we know doesn't work. So, maybe he was a little bit too relaxed and he just couldn't keep pressuring forward. But it didn't look like there was anything stopping Jan from finishing him.
I think that's absolutely a possibility. I was thinking the same thing, that Reyes might have been coming in. It looked when he came in like it looked in a lot of the weigh-ins and the pre-fight, like he thought he was the better guy. Like, yeah, he was being respectful. He just didn't want to be an asshole. But he thought, I'm the better guy. I'm going to knock this guy out. I just went 5 rounds with Jon Jones. Everyone said I would beat him. I'm this almost 3-1 favorite on the booking lines. I'm just better than this guy. I just need to do my thing and I'll win. And he didn't take it maybe seriously enough.
It's like I said, I mean, the hype was all saying, it was just a foregone conclusion, and Dom's just going through the motions. And you never want to buy into your own hype. And that's exactly, I was hyped for him. That's exactly what I thought. But that's me. He should not be as confident in himself as I was. You should always, you got to be careful out there. You underestimate your opponent, this is exactly what happens.
And you have to remember, he's basically, I mean, if he's thinking of that Jon Jones loss as a win, he's essentially an undefeated fighter. And if I'm being honest, if I was a fighter and I just put on the fight that Reyes just did against Jon, I would barely count it as a loss. I'd be like, I didn't even lose, really. Most people think I won. And it's against Jon Jones. Can you really, really count it as a loss? It's just, I didn't do anything wrong. I'm just not Jon Jones. Of course I'm not Jon Jones. Mm-hmm. So, like, it's hard to really – and then you go down and you fight Jan Blachowitz, who I always – whenever I think of Jan Blachowitz, I always think of the way that Luke Rockhold spoke about him beforehand. He's like, why am I going to come to the press conference? I'm fighting Jan Blachowicz. Like, what's this guy going to say? What's this guy going to do to me?
Yeah.
And then he gets knocked out. And that's, I think, what happened with Reyes. It was the same kind of idea. They didn't take him seriously enough. They thought he's good, but he's not at my level. And he showed them the Polish power. Doesn't care what level you think you're on.
Yeah.
You're on the ground level.
Nothing. Star power doesn't mean shit.
You're on
Look
the
at
ground
Sean O'Malley and his last fight.
That's still a fluke in my opinion. But
at the end of the day, star power does not mean shit.
All right, so
don't
we
buy
know
into
that
your own hype.
We know that it's being spoken that Glover Teixeira and Thiago Santos, the winner of that fight, will be the next to fight Jan Blachowicz, as you were mentioning, Noah. Though Dana did say that if Jon wants the fight, he has the fight anytime he wants it.
Fair.
And Jon made a tweet. Now this could just be Jon trying to steal everyone's thunder, as he always does. Of, hey, y'all mind if I make a quick stop and grab my belt back? How typical Jon Jones would it be to be like, hey guys, you want the belt? Go have the belt. Oh, you got the belt? Okay, let me just come back and crush your dreams for a quick second before I go back up to heavyweight.
Jon Jones is like the classic kid who just wants to doesn't want to play with the blocks, and then you go and take the blocks, and he's like, what the hell, man? Those are my blocks. Get away.
You're not using the blocks anymore. I don't want the blocks, but you can't have them because I used to have them.
He's like a little kid. He just, he wants to have his cake and eat it too.
Yeah. I mean, I think it'd be more interesting if he were to let the division play out for a bit, get the heavyweight belt, and then get the light heavyweight belt too. I think that would be a little bit more interesting and give time for the light heavyweight division to grow without him or DC.
Yeah, I agree. I think to be honest, he's just kind of teasing. It doesn't make sense to pick up the belt for one fight and then take it right back. Like, why would he do that? And also, to be honest, if he's been working on his physique and moving up to heavyweight, like, why would he then all of a sudden stop, cut back down, and then go back up again? It doesn't make any sense.
If there's anyone who's going to do something like that purely for their own ego, it's Jones.
No, it's Conor McGregor, but I mean, the second one would be Jones.
They got the same mentality. Yeah, I don't know. Classless move by Jones, but I mean, what do you expect? You can't even fault him for making a classless move at this point. He's Jon Jones. But, geez, does he really want to come back and try this again? Because he's really risking a lot if he gets spectacularly knocked out. I mean,
all right, well,
he hasn't been looking nearly as sharp as he has in the past. And now he's taken a nice, long break off. Who knows what kind of escapades he's been getting into, during his retirement time. I know he's been training and he's been posting pictures, but I mean, like, you know how John Jones is. I'm sure he was caught on camera driving drunk a while ago, getting pulled over by the cops because he was too tired from the quarantine.
No, he was shooting guns into the air, bro. He's getting drunk, shooting guns into the air, and then driving around.
Very
Oh my
fun
God.
body cam footage, by the way, for everyone to look at. Some guys yell at him out of their car driving by.
So what's next for Dom Reyes? You have in the notes here, and I actually have what I think it would be a good matchup for him. Why not put him up against Alexander Rakic?
Yeah, I was gonna say him or Smith, but I mean Rakic just beat Smith, so might as well put him up against him.
I don't want to see Smith taking on anyone, in the top five right now.
Smith is taking some time off. He's not going to be fighting for a while. I like him against Rakic. I think it's a good fight. It's a fun fight. It's a powerful fight. Rakic has that power but Dom has the footwork to avoid that power. He can change the angles really well. So when Rakic attacks a lot in straight lines, when he does so, John's ability to turn a corner and change the angle, like he did against Chris Weidman. I think I can see that happening again. I think it's a really fun fight.
Yeah.
All right, we had to take a quick break there because I had to get my coffee, my brain juice, as they say. But let's jump right back into the fights here. We had, as our featured bout of the night, Kai Kara-France, the third of the four CKB boys, we'll call it that, under Eugene Merriman to fight on that card. He had a tough loss to Brandon Royval. Now, Brandon Royval, by the way, has had 2 fights in the UFC. I don't know if you guys knew that. This guy is brand new, and he's just starts through the competition, and he might be a fight or 2 away from the title shot. But
no kidding.
Let's talk about that in a minute. But that was a crazy, crazy fight. One fight of the night for good reason. Kai Kara-France hurt him bad with a huge right hand very early, came in, tried to get the finish, and Royval kind of panicked, threw a wild spinning back elbow, and hit him. Dropped Kara-France. He looked like he was out on his feet as he dropped, woke up in time, recovered. There were some grappling exchanges. Royval had a bunch of really, really, really close submission attempts. The first round ended real close. Second round, Royval dropped Kara-France again. Kara-France went in for a takedown. Royval got the tight, deep guillotine, got the win. That fight was all over the place. Thank God Henry Cejudo saved the flyweight division, because I want to see fights like those every day of the week or every weekend.
The pace is crazy.
Oh my God.
That like almost every time the flyweights fights compared to like higher up weight classes, like the pace is just unmatched.
It's remarkable the reaction time that these fellas have. I mean, it's like watching a game of chess in extremely fast forwarded. It's just there's always action. It's a great division. It's always fun to watch.
Yeah, and the other reason that the pace is so high, as well as the reaction time and the ability for these small guys to just it's a shorter distance to cover, right? So you can be faster. But when these guys are smaller, they have less muscle to try to fuel and less oxygen consumption as a result. And so they can just go for longer, right? They have much larger gas tanks, and they can keep that high pace, high pressure fight for a full 3 rounds. And you can just see these crazy go fights. It's just so much fun. It's just a shame that the casual fans just don't, because there doesn't seem to be as many knockouts, they don't seem to kind of appreciate it, I guess, because maybe these guys are not physically intimidating as much to them, right? If you saw these guys walking down the street, you might not be as intimidated by one of them. They feel like they could beat them in a fight. But man, these guys are so fun to watch, and there's so much just dynamic, crazy action in every one of these fights. It's so much fun. And the grappling exchanges. Best grappling exchanges in the UFC.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I want him to get the go-go so bad.
Oh, my God. He almost got it, too. Yeah. Man, they were all over. That was a really fun fight. Tough loss for Kai Kara-France. He had a tough loss, I believe, a couple months ago. Maybe it was in December. I'm blanking on who it was against, but that was another. I think Brandon Moreno. Yeah, it was against Brandon Moreno. That was a close fight as well. But I think he's going to pick himself back up. It's clearly Brandon Royval is a guy to watch out. for, because this man with 2 fights in the UFC is going to be a top 5, top 7 fighter. Absolutely. Who's up for? So we got Davison Figueiredo is going to fight against what's his name? Cody Garbrandt in just a couple weeks. When is that fight?
It's funny mentioning that the small guys don't look as intimidating, because Figueiredo is like one of the most intimidating looking people I've ever seen in my life.
Oh my God. So, I mean, Kai Kara-France was ranked number 7 coming into this. Brandon Royval was ranked number 9. So I would see Brandon Royval is probably going to be ranked 7, maybe even 6. And he can take on a guy like Askar Askarov or a guy like Alex Perez. And the winner of that fight can very much be the next contender, right? That can be a title eliminator fight.
Yeah, for sure.
I'm excited for this guy to see what he can do, and he's always a fun guy to watch, as we saw last night. All right, the opening fight of the main card was Mean Hakeem Dawodu getting a 3-round split decision win over Zubaira Tukhugov.
Big win for Canada. Let's go. Let's get a Canadian champion again.
Yes. We should.
How about that?
We need to get him on the podcast, right? You know, the fastest growing podcast in the city of Guelph, at least MMA wise.
Absolutely, no question.
No question about it. So he looked really, really, really good. Hakeem did. Zubaira came in, I think, 4 pounds overweight. It's a 145-pound fight. He came in at 150. Of course, there's that 1 pound weight allowance, so he can come in at 146. He came in at 150, which was pretty excessive in my opinion. And what I think about Zubaira is he doesn't have the gas tank that a lot of the other Dagestani guys do, and he doesn't have the wrestling, the takedown ability that the other guys do. And so Hakeem just kept on with the pressure. The first round was close. It went Zubaira's way on all 3 judges' scorecards, and I agree with that. Second round is when Dawodu the pressure started to really weigh on Zubaira, and he was able to really definitely win that. I would say win that round. It was a lot close. It was still close, but I thought I definitely edged it for Dawodu. And really that third round, he broke him.
He was done.
Zubaira was just trying to survive, and by the end of it, you saw he thought he won the first 2 rounds, and he was just running away. Dawodu was yelling at him, "Fight, stand and fight, let's go." And Zubaira wanted none of it. He thought, not worth the risk. The other guy, I won the first 2 rounds. I'll win the fight anyway. Let's just play it safe and run away. And I'm glad it bit him in the ass, because
when
like that.
When Dawodu was chasing him down and yelling at him, God, let me not mistake this name. You know what, Rowie? What's his name? One more time. Say it for me.
Zubaira Tukhugov.
All right. Well, regardless.
Tukhugov.
The Canadian man.
Call him Zuba. You can call him Zuba.
Zuba?
Zuba right. And Hakeem Dawodu. Or Mean Hakeem.
I hate people's goddamn names so much.
Mean Hakeem. That's easy. Come on.
Dawodu, I know. He's my boy. He's Canadian. I'd probably give him a call right now.
Zuba's easy.
But Zuba, okay. Dawodu's chasing down Zuba. Zuba's looking at him like, he was giving him like this look of like, what the fuck are you doing? You look like an asshole. And then Dawodu started swinging at him. And he started hitting. And Zuba just was not very happy. He went from like, this man is doing some ridiculous shenanigans to, oh shit, this man's fucking terrifying. He's scary. And he started laying on some serious damage, and that round was like, that was a dominant round for Dawodu. That was a phenomenally dominant round. He beat the shit out of him. That was a lot of fun to watch. Let's go, Canada. Let's go. Taking it home.
So I think an interesting conversation to have actually about that this fight brings up is you'd think it's completely unrelated. I don't think we've actually had this conversation on this program. So some people have advocated for open scoring in MMA. Open scoring meaning that at the end of every round, when the judges put in their scorecards, put in the scores for that round, because by the way, the judges don't decide before at the end of the fight. They put in their scores at the end of every round, and they can't change it. So people have advocated, what if we just flash those scores to the audience? The fighters, the coaches, and the audience know what the score is coming into that next round. Well, Now, it wouldn't have happened in this fight because it was 1-1 on 2 out of the 3 judges' scorecards. But let's say it was 2-0 for Zuba. And Zuba, as we know, what he thought he was going to do, or what he did. He ran away when he thought he was up 2-0. That can happen again and again when you see fighters up 2-0 in 3-round fights. They just run away and just try to survive that 3rd round. They don't engage. They don't fight back. And then this is a serious concern that of something that can happen if we engage or if we bring in open scoring. What do you guys think about that?
I feel like that leads to like a lot of different outcomes and like a lot of different fights, and that they would play out severely differently as if open scoring weren't a thing. And I don't know. I feel like that changes the sport a lot.
But is it in a good way or a bad way?
I don't know. We'd have to see it play out. I mean, like practically as opposed to just theorizing what it could be. But I don't know if it could be good or bad.
No, what do you think?
I'm gonna just stand on Adam's answer because I feel like anything I'm gonna say is gonna make me sound like a dumb ass. So I am inclined to agree with Adam.
So actually, on that note then, here's what I'm kind of frustrated about. Luke Thomas talks about this all the time. Why is it that the UFC is not going and trying these things out? Why don't they go into, for example, LFA or Cage Warriors or Cage Rage or all the other regional promoters that promote under the UFC? They have deals with them, right? They're all on the UFC Fight Pass. So all these things they could, if they wanted to, convince these regional promotions to try out these different types of scoring systems, these different types of rule sets, whatever it might be, change things up, try them out at the regional level. When you look at all the other major sports organizations, the NHL, the NBA, the NFL, MLB, they all have the AAA affiliate. They all have these minor league leagues where all the rules that they go and bring into the big league, they first adopt in the minor leagues, see what's going to happen, collect the data, see if it has a positive or negative impact on the sport, and then they choose whether or not to bring it into the major leagues. But if you don't even try, you're never going to know. And the UFC doesn't try shit. It's so frustrating.
Well, yeah. I'll tell you one thing. Never underestimate just the sheer power of like people's egos on the top. At the end of the day, a lot of business decisions that may not seem to make sense can just come down to executives who just say, I know what's best. It's my way or the highway. And they're not going to take any external ideas.
It's possible. There's also the power of inertia. You can never underestimate the power of inertia, right? The way that it is it's just easy to keep it the way that it is, right? It takes effort. It takes energy to go and change and move things off of the status quo. And if no one's going to go and take that initiative and take that first step to start to move things in the right direction, it's just never going to happen.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't seem to be Dana's first priority. Money seems to be Dana's first priority. Mm-hmm. Yes, go ahead.
Making any kind of sweeping changes, also, it's a costly endeavor that he'd have to undertake. I don't know. It's interesting. I would love to know what Dana's 5 to 10 year plan is, because there's absolutely a 5, 10, 20 year plan for like the future of UFC, Dana's role. And because I mean, he's very resistant to like, external kind of influences. So I'm wondering what that plan for the next couple of years is. I'd really like to know how COVID really interrupted those 5 to 10 year plans.
I mean,
something like
wise it did.
I wonder if even something like the island and investing in Abu Dhabi. I mean, investing in like the UAE was absolutely part of like a long-term plan. I wonder if the island was like a last-minute sort of thing, or if it was something that had been in the works.
The island was
previously.
A last-minute thing.
Probably was. That's the kind of
have,
thing that goes his way. But like, things like just anything that's in a large amount of money is invested in that. Those are things that have been thought of years in advance.
So I think there's a couple big changes it's going to have. So one of them is things are going to be rushed or changed. Things that they would have considered, maybe they were already considering, they're going to implement more, I guess, aggressively. So one example of that is the UFC hotel that they announced a couple months ago. They wouldn't have done, I think they were probably going to do that eventually anyway, but I think that COVID really sped that up. It made it gave them a good reason to want to do it now, so they have an easy place to quarantine. But in general, the UFC has already been trying to become more independent, more just not reliant on anybody else. Right, so you see them putting up these PIs everywhere, as I mentioned, as we spoke about last year, last week. Yes, they put so that they can kind of invest in people and in talent all around the world without having to rely on these gyms. And I think what they're going to start doing is the same kind of thing in the regional scene, because they see that the regional MMA scene is falling apart because they don't have ticket sales among the COVID era. They're the ones that are really, really punished the hardest. And so I think that they're starting to invest in that as well. Noah, you're trying to
I just want to interject because based on your description, it may not be clear to laymen out there. PI does not mean a private investigator in this circumstance. The UFC is not sending private investigators to look into potential athletes. These are performance institutes.
Yes, they are putting these performance institutes all around the world. And so, yes, but the point is, again, they're investing in ways to become more independent, less reliant on anybody else. And that, I think, is going to start including the regional scene. I'm really excited to see what the UFC does to try to grow the regional scene and give these regional fighters a chance to fight. Because you can have as many PIs as you want. You can have as many guys training at these high-level gyms as you want. But if you have no regional scene for these guys to actually test themselves and come in with some experience into the UFC, it's all for naught, right? And so what we see them starting to do is the first step that they're doing, which is the easiest thing they could do, is they're starting up with TUF again, right? They have the Ultimate Fighter that's starting up again, and I actually want to talk about that in the news. So I guess we can talk about that in a minute. So the Ultimate Fighter starting up again. They're doing Contender Series seasons, and they're doing as many as they can. They're probably planning on doing these things anyway, but again, they're rushing them in to give the guys that have had no chance to fight and no chance to test themselves a chance to do so and a chance to make money. All right, we have one last fight to talk about on this UFC 253 card. This was a preliminary card fight. We had Diego Sanchez against Jake Matthews. Diego Sanchez, the original Ultimate Fighter, with a career that's been about, 49 years now, long, something like that. I don't know. I lost count.
That seems a little ambitious.
I think he's 37 or 38.
Oh, well, I mean.
But shit, that man probably came fighting out of the womb.
Well, he
launched out of the womb head first with his jaw out there, fists closed, just ready for the world.
Yeah, I will say. So look, Diego, he lost a decision. Rightfully so. He did lose the fight, definitely. He was outclassed. But at the end of the day, Diego looked a lot better than he usually does, or than he has in his last few fights. He looked a lot more comfortable. We did see a couple times when the Diego of old came out, which, what I mean by that, of that big just parallel stance, caution to the wind, big wide haymakers. But I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, right? It's a good thing if you're looking for, does he still have it? And mentally, it looks like he still, Diego Sanchez never quite had it mentally. But, in terms of
a fighter, that's a very good thing.
Yes, but,
he's got nothing to lose.
Does he still have that killer instinct? And yes, he does. You can still see he has that killer instinct. He is still a fighter. He is still, he's not like a Tyron Woodley who's too hesitant at this point. He's not at all that guy. But, the Diego Sanchez of old wouldn't be a top 5 welterweight in today's MMA, in today's UFC. It's just that style of fighting just doesn't cut it anymore,
No. Yeah. It's outdated. But, in a lot of ways, Diego Sanchez will never be outdated.
But, you
can never not talk about him. He made it fun. Doesn't matter what he's doing. He makes it fun.
For sure. And like last week we spoke about fighters that maybe should retire, but they're like Cowboy and Tyron, but maybe there's still fun fights for them available. At this point, I don't think there's any fun fights for Diego left. To be perfectly honest,
retire. He has to retire. I don't think there's even a question.
Right, like in the instance of Cowboy and Woodley, there's still fun fights there for them, but for Diego, it's what are you gonna do?
that flying knee that he threw was just about the funniest thing I've ever seen in a UFC fight. Was outrageously just such a poorly timed, everybody knew what he was going to do ahead of time. I mean, for a second, I thought he might have just been meditating on the cage and just not going to do anything. But then, I mean, come on.
So on
no
what
one's going to fall for that.
On what you were saying, Adam, with the whole thing about there are no fun fights for him, I agree, but I disagree. I mean, I think at the end of the day, realistically, every fight with Diego Sanchez is a fun fight. However, you brought up a good point in that, you talk about guys like Woodley, and you think, okay, well maybe he has one more kind of fun, a couple more fun fights in him. And I think that Diego, that is maybe true, but that was also true 5 fights ago, right? Yeah. 5 fights ago, we were saying about him what we are saying right now about Woodley, and he kept on doing it, and they've given him those fun fights. But how long do you want to give these guys these fun fights where they're taking more brain damage before you just say, okay, man, but we've had your fun. What are we doing here? And as Dana said, I think it is time to have that talk, and it's probably been time to have that talk for a little while now. Yes, he won 3 of his last 5, but it's important to remember that one of those 5 was a knockout by an illegal knee. That's why he won, but he got knocked out anyway.
Yeah. So, and he was being completely outclassed in that fight.
And he was being destroyed by Michel Pereira.
It was a very upsetting to watch him take that win. Although
there's nothing left for him here.
I mean, look at it this way. They would headline a fight night card with Cowboy any day of the week. It'd be extremely unlikely for them to headline a fight night card with Diego Sanchez.
Let's go even easier.
No.
Let's go even easier.
Never happening.
It would be easy for them to headline a Conor McGregor card with Cowboy Cerrone. Whereas in Dana's words, if they did so with Diego Sanchez, they would have their license taken away.
Yeah.
Yeah, everybody. There would be
literally.
It would be like
actually happened.
Chuck Liddell against Tito Ortiz today.
Yeah.
It would be borderline illegal.
Yeah. Well, actually, let's continue on that note. So as we were just saying, Cowboy, you would still headline him, and he did just headline a Conor McGregor card, and McGregor then asked for an even easier fight in I would say every MMA fan's mind in Diego Sanchez, and as would be expected, Dana said no. He said that and we saw in the actual texts they would lose their promoter's license. This was revealed in a string of texts.
If you reveal those texts, you're double breaking the bro code now.
So this was revealed in a string of texts by Conor McGregor. He leaked 5 or 6 texts, screenshots of texts with Dana White. And as you just mentioned, Noah, Dana was not happy. He said he broke every man's code.
The man code.
You don't. It's one of the
I know I've
dirtiest
got a
things
copy
you
of
can
my
do.
man code. I keep it in my drawer underneath my Bible.
Is the romance between Conor McGregor and Dana White over? Are they breaking up?
Oh my God! Of course not. When you have a man that makes you, hundreds of $1 million a year.
No, but here's the thing, Adam. They were together, right? But it looks like Conor McGregor has another man, right? Conor McGregor wants to make his money with another woman. He wants to make the Manny Pacquiao fight, and maybe Dana's not going to be so happy when he realizes he's not going to make as much money as he wants to. Dana, when he was asked at the press conference last night, said, "Oh, I don't know what's going on with that." Conor, a couple hours later, called him out, called him a liar, and said, "You know about it because you had to sign letters. Thank you very much, you liar." They are beefing.
Yeah, okay, so Noah and I spoke briefly about this before we started, and I said that when there's news like, oh, Conor McGregor maybe has a fight booked, potential opponents in the works and stuff like that, all the reporters always ask Dana in post-fight pressers, what's the news on Conor? And he always acts like he has no idea what's going on. He's like, oh, I don't know anything about that. Like, we're not working on Conor. He's retired. And like I said, there's a certain degree to which, you keep stuff hidden from a promotional aspect. You don't want to let stuff out. But Dana acting like he has no idea that the McGregor versus Pacquiao fight was in talks, that, it exists. Like, it's just stupid. Why would you act like it doesn't exist? Like, it's all over the news. He just brushed it off like it was no big deal.
But he usually brushes. Yeah, you're right. He does usually brush those kind of things off with McGregor. He doesn't know what he's allowed to say.
Yeah.
What do you guys think about that fight? Do you think that, first of all, does that fight make any sense?
Pacquiao and McGregor? I
Pacquiao,
mean,
McGregor, Mac Pack.
Just for the sense that it's from May Mac to Mac Pack.
Yeah. It makes sense just fine to me. I mean, I think that Pacquiao said he's going to donate the proceeds of his end of the fight to COVID relief, which is, I mean, shit, makes sense to me. Makes more sense than fucking Logan Paul and fucking
Floyd Mayweather.
Shit, put those two fights on the same card, and then put it in Fortnite.
You know what? And that makes you raise a very good point. In a world with Logan Paul and Floyd Mayweather, in a world with 53-year-old Mike Tyson and 51, I think, year old Roy Jones Jr., in a world with Jake Paul against Nate Robinson, and this is all after Mayweather and McGregor fought. I think Mac Pack is okay when you consider Pacquiao is very, very, very much at the tail end of his career. And they're also not selling it as much as a big, serious card if they're really saying this is for charity. They're not selling it as a real, there's no belt on the line.
I don't know if it's for charity. Pacquiao, his end
is for charity, but there's no belt on the line.
Yeah.
I think okay. It's a little bit more in this crazy COVID era. It's a bit more okay, but damn,
we have lost our barometer of what makes sense.
Can we just have Conor fight some normal MMA fights against the top levels in 155? Just go by the rules. Stop going on the McGregor rules. Fight a Gaethje
you actually,
or a Tony or a Poirier. Right, fight Tony or Poirier today, and then fight for the belt.
I want to see Conor do freak fights the rest of his career. I want to see him do like a gauntlet. Like, we're going to take a bunch of unranked guys slowly increasing in skill, and he's going to fight them all in a row. Maybe two guys at once.
Conor McGregor against two flyweights.
I think that, okay, tell me I'm wrong here. Tell me I'm wrong. Conor McGregor, I believe, will in the next 10 years. In the next 10 years, Conor McGregor will box a kangaroo. I believe that. I believe that to be the case. A few years.
All right. Well, guys, I'll put it this way. If Conor McGregor puts on an official exhibition where he boxes a kangaroo, I will eat 5 cans of asparagus.
You're fucking on, bro.
Set in stone.
Oh man, I did. So for our listeners that don't know what we're talking about, a Reddit individual announced that he would eat 3 cans of asparagus.
3 cans of asparagus.
If Paulo Costa lost that fight, and we have yet to find out whether or not OP delivered.
I'm checking his Reddit account now. It doesn't look like he has responded or posted anything since.
What's his name?
He is useless_uterus, and on the MMA
uterus,
on the MMA subreddit, he or she, they now have a tag asparagus bitch boy.
Useless asparagus, you officially have beef with the Smeshcast podcast.
If they ever post again, they will be the asparagus bitch boy unless they eat their asparagus.
If we ever see him, it might be Smesh Sunday.
It might just have to be. Maybe we can reach out and get an official interview Maybe they'll
that would
eat
be
the
awesome.
asparagus live on
That
on
would be
our show.
that would be
be
insane.
pretty hilarious.
You
That
should
would
reach out
be-
to him, Noah. Reach out to him on our behalf.
That'll do it. Honestly, I don't think anyone's ever going to hear from him again.
Noah, reach out to him on our behalf. See if we can get him on. That would make us
Sure,
legends.
we'll make an official Smeshcast Reddit account.
Amazing. All right, let's move on to some more news. So we have some movement in that 170 division, right? So everyone knows after that insane one-punch knockout Khamzat Chimaev had against Gerald Meerschaert, they were supposed to have the Damian Maia fight, but now it looks like he's doing so well after that crazy knockout, they might even skip over Damian Maia or give him another fight before that. And Dana White has confirmed they were working on a 5-round main event for Khamzat, and he also later confirmed after sources revealed to Ariel Helwani of ESPN that 5-round main event was supposed to be against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson. Now, Wonderboy has actually been saying he doesn't want that fight. He wants Leon Edwards, and it seems as though Dana is willing to accept Wonderboy's request and is going to be making the Leon Edwards against Stephen Wonderboy Thompson fight. So 2 questions. The first is, what do you guys think of that fight, of course? And the follow-up, what do we do then with Khamzat? Do we give him the Maia fight? Do we give him someone else before that, with someone after that? Who should it be? Let's hear it. Let's start off with Leon and Wonderboy. That's a great fight.
I'm happy anytime Wonderboy fights because to me he is the most entertaining striker in the UFC. It
Over
just feels
Adesanya?
good to watch.
Over Izzy?
Yeah, I enjoy watching those karate strikes even more. Like Izzy is really fun to watch, but like just the way that those kicks look, the way that just like Wonderboy's arms and fit, they're like pistons, just straight shots, perfect. It's beautiful. I love watching that karate style. So I'm always excited. I'm always game, and I really do want to see Wonderboy work his way up to a title shot. So I'm glad that he's taking on Leon rather than Khamzat because really Khamzat doesn't earn Wonderboy anything other than the status of having beaten a big hype train. Doesn't really mean anything to him. I mean, where's Marlon Vera at? Beating a hype train doesn't really mean anything at a certain point. So I'm in it mostly because I want to see Wonderboy get a title shot. I think he can earn it. And I'll be honest, I think that it's a testament to how little Leon Edwards has been marketed. I don't recall. I mean, I've definitely watched cards with him, but like I'm looking
in a year or so.
Yeah,
but he's beaten some big guys. Look, he's beaten
he
Cowboy.
has. He certainly has. Yeah. But
right, he's beaten. Who else did he beat? He beat Gunnar Nelson.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he outstruck Cowboy and he out-grappled Gunnar Nelson. Like, he's an all-around really good fighter.
Oh, no question. No question.
Yeah, for sure.
I
he beat RDA. He put it on RDA.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's been campaigning for a title shot for about a year now, maybe even more. And I think he's earned it, but the UFC has clearly set out their plan for the 170 division that, Kamaru is going to defend against Gilbert, and then sort of what plays out with Jorge and Kobe. It sucks, but at least they told him straight out, we're not focusing on you right now, Leon. So I think it's more beneficial for Leon to fight somebody to stay active and relevant to the public than to just sit out for an even longer amount of time until the top 4 guys sort of work out what's going on between them.
Yeah, I agree. Just because this is no one else for Leon to fight, right? When you look at the rankings,
right?
It's the best fight to make for Leon because you're not going to make the Masvidal fight or the Colby fight, as great as those fights would be. They're not making them. They've already announced those guys are going to be fighting each other. And when we look at the rest of the guys, Gilbert Burns is obviously going to fight tomorrow. So then the next guy in line, so then you other 2 guys you have are just Wonderboy and then Maia. Wonderboy's 5, Maia's 6. So Wonderboy is the guy that you want to fight. He's the highest ranked guy that's available. Leon Edwards deserves the highest guy that's available. The only thing that's kind of frustrating to me is that he's going to win this fight. Let's say he wins this fight. They're still going to give it to the winner of Colby and Jorge. As long as he's healthy, the winner of that fight is going to get the Kamaru fight or the Gilbert Burns fight, even though Leon deserves it.
Mm-hmm.
So he's going to get spurned again. It's crazy.
Yep.
Leon Edwards is going to be the Tony Ferguson of the 170 division.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's tough when you have a store. I'm convinced more so that Colby's going to win. He's going to beat Masvidal. That's what I think.
Absolutely.
And I think that the UFC just loves the story of Kamaru and Covington. And it doesn't make it, for me as a fan, it doesn't sting as bad to skip over Leon for that rematch, because a rematch of Covington and Usman is, I think, very difficult to say no to, because, that fight was, for a lot of it, very neck and neck. If Masvidal wins and he gets the rematch with Usman, I will be very disappointed to see Leon get skipped over, because Masvidal is not. I don't think he stands any chance of beating Usman.
I'm thinking about it. It might not be as bad as we thought. Now that I'm thinking about it, I'm going to backtrack a little bit. If Kamaru fights Gilbert in December and he's ready to fight again in like March or April, as long as Leon fights Wonderboy before December, then he'll be ready way before the winner of Colby and Jorge, who are fighting in January, maybe even February, right? So they might just be ready. They might be able to fit in a Leon fight and then the winner of Colby, Jorge, and everyone ends up winning in the end. Or except for the losers of the fight, but
Right.
The fans win.
Then if Leon beats Marty, and then Marty, I don't know why I just called him that.
His name is Mr. Fake Newsman.
Mr. Fake Newsman.
Oh man,
Kamaru Snoozman.
Apologies, Kamaru.
If Leon beats Kamaru, yes.
Well, then that kind of upsets Kobe and Kamaru fighting. But I mean, look, that's way down the road. We don't really have to worry about that.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
In other news, it was also just announced that there will be another fight for Robbie Lawler. He is not yet retiring. He will be facing Mike Perry. In Mike Perry, it is important to note, his first fight back after he recently went through what they call an intensive anger management program to help after his kerfuffle at a bar a couple months back.
Kerfuffle. I gotta respect someone who goes and seeks out the company mandated help that they need.
I was gonna say, it wasn't his choice.
Well, he got through the program. I hope that he does better in the future.
And speaking of doing better in the future, we kind of hoped, as we mentioned a couple weeks ago on the podcast, that Robbie Lawler wouldn't have a future fighting in the UFC. We were hoping that he would hang up the gloves and maybe move some sort of other role, coaching, managing, whatever it might be. Just stay in the sport, but don't fight anymore. Unfortunately, that doesn't look like that's going to happen. And anything to add on to that is kind of disappointing. But I mean, I hope he doesn't take too much damage, and I hope Mike Perry's craziness brings back at least some fun Robbie Lawler, and he can win the fight and then retire on it. I don't think that those things are going to happen. I'm probably wrong on both of them, but I hope that he can get both of them a win and a retirement, and we can call it a career, an amazing one, a legendary career at that.
Oh, for sure. It's crazy how, if this was, imagine a prime Lawler versus Mike Perry. The craziness between the two of them, that could be an all-time entertaining brawl.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I mean, we've said it before. I don't think we need to tread this water again. Robbie Lawler probably ought to get out of the fight game and enjoy hopefully a fulfilling career on the sidelines.
All right, let's move on to one more thing I want to talk about in the news before we go into next week's card. As we have mentioned, Dana has announced that he is planning on filming The Ultimate Fighter upon his return after Fight Island in November. So yes. We have spoken about this in the past, but I think we have a bit more clarity in the divisions now of what's going to be booked, when it will be booked for, who's going to be ready and when. And I have a bit of a hot take of who I think is going to be in who are going to be the coaches for that fight. So I think I mentioned a little bit of a dark horse. I think is Stipe Ngannou. That could be fun. But I think the front runners for coaching is going to be Colby and Masvidal. Colby Covington against Jorge Masvidal as the coaches of the Ultimate Fighter is a perfect thing. It gives the perfect excuse to book it as a main event for a pay-per-view because that's the only thing that Masvidal is going to take, and that's the only way to because Masvidal is only going to take big money, and that's the only way to justify big money for him. It's the perfect setup.
That would be such good.
Yeah, it makes me think
God.
A couple of weeks ago, I think we sort of spoke about this, and I said that they should do Nate and Jorge as the coaches. But thinking more on it, like Nate wouldn't be great as a coach on the camera. I don't think. Like, you know, he's the type of person that just shows up to fight, and that's his character. So I think Kobe and Masvidal are two perfect opponents that like play into the theatrics of it a little bit.
Absolutely, and there's the whole backstory.
Their interactions will be organic.
They used to coach each other.
It'll be a lot of fun to watch.
Right? They used to coach each other. They've been around the game a long time, so they're great coaches in general. I'm sure they're very, very, very knowledgeable, both of them. They hate each other. They're great talkers. Colby has also been making headlines across the whole sports world, not only MMA. And so if you want to bring people in, who better than a guy they've heard of, Colby Covington, who they're going to want to watch, available on ESPN on a weekly basis. All the anger and grit and all the things going on in our world, especially the American world, is going to be headlined by Colby. It's just such a perfect recipe. And then you put on the big fight. You film it in November. You put on the fight in January, February. So you give them December, maybe January to train for that fight. You put it on in February, and then you have a perfect the winner of that fight then becomes the challenger for the belt, who maybe you can, again, as I mentioned earlier, fit Kamaru or Gilbert against Leon Edwards if he can beat Wonder Boy before then. It's just perfect.
Yeah, I think it makes a lot more sense than Stipe and Ngannou because, you know, ultimately, I mean, Stipe is a guy that, I mean, let's face it, he doesn't make great TV. You know, he's not an entertainer. But, you know, you get Masvidal and you get Colby. Those are two guys that the UFC wants to keep on camera as much as possible.
Right.
If they could have cameras rolling full time, always around them, and just getting that shit beat, just editing the best footage and putting that shit on ESPN, they would do it in a heartbeat. So I think that's such an easy decision for them to make, just in terms of, you know, it's the perfect synergy of a good fight that everyone wants to see at the end and pure entertainment television.
Perfect.
God, what a good show.
I
recommend everyone to go back and watch the old Ultimate Fighter seasons. One, to watch, you know, fighters that, you know and recognize now and see them behind the scenes back in the old days. And God damn, there's so many funny moments on that show. People are so fucking jazzed up and they're yelling at each other. And it's a lot of fun. I recommend it.
All right. So guys, I've got a question for you. You know how I know that, or why it's so easy to tell that the women's divisions above 115 are so shallow? Because Holly Holm is headlining Fight Night cards at the end of 2020, and no one is batting a fucking eye. And that's not even the disrespect on Holly Holm. I know Noah, you hate when I hate on the legends, but here's the thing. Holly Holm has, I think, one of the most title fights ever. She keeps on losing, and she hasn't adapted much. She's the same fighter she was years ago, and she's still at the top of the 125-pound division all these years later without winning a bout, without doing anything, taking all these losses, because there's just no one underneath at a high level to come and catch up. I'm hoping, nothing against Holly, but I'm hoping that her opponent here in Irene Aldana will be able to replicate what she had in her previous fight against Caitlin Vieira and get a nice knockout, show some clean combinations, and really allow the young generation to finally start taking over, because that 125 and 135 and 145 pound divisions badly needed.
Yeah. New blood in these young divisions is always a good thing, and I think there's been a certain pattern that's been happening recently of the young eating the old. And
it's a classic pattern in MMA.
It's classic. And, you know, sometimes it doesn't work out. One of the I think the first Cowboy fight I watched was him fighting that fucking Adonis looking kid from who was 26 and who was talking shit about him being an old man. Sometimes that happens.
Alex Hernandez.
Yeah, that was the one. That was an old one. Well, older. But you know, lately with 2020, it's been a real passing of the guard year.
All right, other fights. Do you guys have anything to say about this fight? To be honest, it's not a lot for me to say.
I don't have a whole lot to say about next week. I guess.
Actually, one thing I just noticed that I find shocking. You'd expect Irene Aldana is this young up-and-comer, young blood. Holly Holm has been around forever. And then you look at their record. Holly Holm is 13-5. Irene Aldana is 12-5.
Yeah, that does look interesting on paper.
But to be fair, Holly's fights were all UFC fights. She came in really, really early, whereas Irene Aldana's have not been nearly at the same level.
Mm-hmm. Also, a lot of Holly's losses are against, to be fair, killers, genuine killers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, she got knocked out recently by Amanda Nunes, so.
Yeah, I mean, that's to be expected.
Overall, this card is not very good, to be completely honest. There's really not a lot of good names. Our co-main event.
On paper. We've been here before. So let's not make any sweeping declarations just yet. So we've got Kyler on the card, man.
Yeah, so we got our man Kyler Phillips, who's I think should be replacing George Masvidal for Street Jesus. Look at this man, the long hair and all. Beautiful man. I don't know who he is. He's fighting Cameron Else, who I also don't know who he is. But I mean, they're headlining the prelims, so I hope they're at least they're fun. They're exciting. We have our main card. Co-main event is Jorgen De Castro, who had a big splash on the Contender Series, but he's not a co-main event kind of fighter. You'd expect that the second card on Fight Island would be a little bit more stacked than this. This is pretty disappointing.
Mm-hmm. But it's gotta hurt when you look at the prelims and you see old Carlos Condit fighting Court McGee.
And how is it that on a fight this terrible, on a fight card this boring and so, I guess, it has no names, right? So light on name value. How can you find Carlos Condit isn't even headlining the prelims? He's the co-main event of the prelims.
God. And they also have Jermaine Durandamy too. I mean, if they put those in the top 3 fights,
she's the third fight. GDR is the third fight.
Okay, but I mean, Carlos Condit too. In the 3 fights of the leading up to the main event, I think there would be a little bit more buzz around the card. But I mean, it's is what it is. We'll have to endure some more boring fights on paper. Up until we have Khabib Gaethje and Mariah Sandhagen, fights like that.
I mean, here's a hot take. Why don't they just put GDR against Holly and Irene Aldana against Juliana Pena? That's a good fight. Holly Holm and GDR. Didn't they have a fight already? Didn't GDR take the belt from Holly Holm?
Yeah, I think so. I think
no.
Took the belt. I think
Misha Tate took the belt from Holly Holm.
Yes, you're right. But have they had a fight? I think they have. But maybe
I think GDR beat her, if I'm not mistaken.
I think so, but I'm not sure. But that's a good fight to do. I would want to see that fight again. Anyway, that's a good fight.
Yeah, that'd be good. But this on paper it is what it is. But we'll see what happens. I am just really sad looking at Carlos Condit's record. He is a good example of, you look at his record and you can see GSP changes people. And from that moment, it was all downhill. And he has just worked his way down the rankings to the point where he is a prelim fighter, which is very sad to see at this point in his career. So I'm actually looking forward. And all these cards on Fight Island are headlined by great fights, except for maybe next week is okay. But the ones afterwards have amazing headlining fights.
But the rest of the fights are a little light. They have some good ones, but nothing too special, nothing with big on name value. They really threw all the name value they had onto UFC 254, onto the Khabib card. They threw it all on there.
Yeah.
And
Well,
hopefully it pays off.
Yeah. If you're doing fights every weekend, you're going to have some like this. I mean, it's making way for the next 2 fight nights with, Marlon Moraes, Sandhagen. That's going to be great. And then, of course, Ortega and Korean Zombie, which is also going to be phenomenal. So, if you got to trade off one weekend for something which is on paper, again, on paper really doesn't mean anything. It's pure speculation, and we've been dead wrong about that in the past.
Yeah, for sure.
So, it is what it is. Gonna tune in next weekend, crack open a couple of drinks, hope for the best.
Exactly. And I mean, and on that note, actually, the UFC 254 card has been officially announced. We can talk about that next week because we've been going a little long here and we're not paid by the hour. And so
we should go over it next week too, because I have to go to the bathroom.
Exactly. All right. Well, on that note, hopefully you guys enjoyed the episode. If you did, always remember, please leave us a like, leave a comment, ask us some questions. We will go over them. Any questions you have, we'll go over if they're half-decent questions. And of course, subscribe to our channel. We will see you guys next Sunday.